How the car sales industry changed my life. Check it out. What's going on, guys? It's Corey. So I wanted to make this video to talk about, my experience as a car salesman, joining the car sales industry and how it overall changed my life, right? And this video might be good for you if you're thinking about getting into car sales. Maybe you're fresh out of high school, or you're contemplating whether, you should be in college or whatever the case may be, or maybe you just got started in the car sales industry and you're trying to see if it's something that could be beneficial for you, right? So I want to kind of talk about my story a little bit, my experience, how I got into car sales, and overall how it helped transform my life, for the better, I would like to say. So kind of starting from the beginning, I got into the car sales industry when I was only 19 years old. Right. And growing up, I didn't have any aspirations to be a car salesman. As a kid, I pretty much, like I'm sure most of you watching, you probably had aspirations to play some type of sport, right? So mine was basketball. I wanted to make it to the NBA, right? Obviously, as you grow older, by the time I was like in the 11th or 12th grade, I quickly figured that the NBA goal and the dream of becoming an NBA player is probably not going to be the thing. And this is when my mind started thinking about the next step in life after high school, which is at the time for me was college, right? Because this is what was being pushed, in the household that I was in. Like, hey, you should go to college. So at the time I'm thinking, okay, I probably want to be an engineer. And then when I got to college, I initially changed the major from engineering to business. So right before I got to college, once I graduated high school, that summer, right after high school was actually when I got, my first initial job, right? And I didn't have any sales experience before I got to the car sales industry. My first job that I ever had was actually as a beach attendant. So that entire summer, I pretty much worked as a beach attendant, for a company where, we'd go on the beach. They pretty much set us up at this hotel that we would meet up every single day, and then we'd go and set the beach up for the residents that are booking a stay at that hotel, like a kind of a luxury hotel. So I did that pretty much for the entire summer. And throughout that summer, this is when, my interest in business started picking up, right? So I started trying to learn skills, especially towards the end of summer and close to when school was pretty much starting. And I think actually, if I remember correctly, close to when, I actually went to college for like that first semester, I started learning a lot about business. So this is why I got introduced to things such as e-commerce, right? So, creating an online store, that was pretty hot, a few years back. And then also things like social media marketing, right? SMMA. This is where I got introduced to these concepts. And this is where I got introduced to like the online world, right? Like the online marketing world. And I didn't know at the time, but the skills that I was learning along that process, right? And this is the very beginning, this is me at 18, almost 19 years old. What's going on, everyone? So a lot of you may be interested in figuring out how you can sell more cars or just make more money in general. Listen, click the first link in the description to join the Smarter Salesman University community. Once again, click the first link in the description to join the Smarter Salesman University community. I'm looking forward to helping you out, see if we can share some nuggets with you. More importantly, looking forward to meeting you. Let's get back to the video. All right, so I had known absolutely nothing about business, never did anything about business. Nobody in my family ever had a business. So I did absolutely nothing. I'm learning from scratch. I'm learning all these concepts and, all of this new information, right? And I didn't know it at the time, but the things that I was learning would actually serve me and benefit me for when I actually got into the car sales industry as a car salesman. We're going to talk about that, right? So that summer I learned, this is where I got introduced to things like Instagram ads, Facebook ads, creating like your own, marketing campaigns, things of that nature. This is where I got introduced is when I started learning about e-commerce and SMMA. So school starts, right? And this summer as well, if I remember, I also, was doing like some Uber Eats for income, right? I had my e-commerce store up at the time, didn't make any money. I was using the money that I made from Uber to fund the marketing campaigns that I was running for this e-commerce store. I didn't have a job anymore at the time, right? Because that job that I had as a beach attendant was only for the summer. So school starts, I'm going to college, I'm in class, and I'm quickly realizing that, college is probably not for me, right? I remember saying that to my friends and to the people that were just simply around me, like it just wasn't for me. I was sitting in class and I'm like, yo, I don't think this is for me. So, after school, after class or whatever the case may be, I would always go do some Uber, right? And I'll also still try to build up this e-commerce store, that I had, right? And long story short, during college, I ended up having to leave the household that I was in because simply put, right, the vision that, they had for me wasn't aligning with what I thought I wanted to do at the time, right? And a lot of you might be saying, that's pretty prideful of a 19-year-old, which, yeah, I think, looking back it was, but I'm actually very happy I made that decision. So around this time, I had a car, 2013 Honda Civic that my dad had got me at the time. So, I left the house, I had like some money stacked up, like about $800 if I remember correctly, from selling some stuff that were around the house and also from Uber, right? And I had this grand plan that I was gonna pretty much use that money to build up this e-commerce store that I had, right, at the time. So that obviously didn't work. And at this time, I'm pretty much living in different Airbnbs. I'm going around finding, different Airbnbs. I'm staying, at this certain spot for like a week. week or this certain spot for like a few days. Eventually I ended up finding a spot where I ended up staying for like about 6 months, right? Because they gave me a good deal. I think I was spending like $600 a month, right? But in this stage, this is where, you know, the car sales industry comes in. I know I kind of went on a long rant, but this is pretty much where I started searching up things that I can do that, you know, didn't require a college degree. I actually made this search before I even left the house, right? I remember seeing different type of jobs that I could do that didn't require a college degree that you can make, you know, good income. So when I searched this up on Google, you know, everything that pretty much popped up were saying sales. So my first initial sales job wasn't even car sales. I remember going to this company that they pretty much were doing door to door. I believe if I remember, they were selling like cable. That wasn't really my thing. I literally only spent one day there and I was like, nah, this is not for me, right? Like they just dropped us off in this neighborhood, pretty much had us knocking random doors. And I'm thinking like, this is not really my style. So I remember seeing the second thing on the list that I remember seeing was car sales. And I was like, okay, I like cars. And, you know, they say, you know, sales is where you can make the income that you want to make without having a college degree. So I gave it a shot. I went to a bunch of different, you know, dealerships in my area, searched up a bunch, you know, that were in my area, went for interviews. And then I ended up first initially getting a job at a Chevy dealership, right? And when I got started at the Chevy dealership, I remember it was a Monday I went, they told me I could start on a Wednesday. So I just took them because out of all the places that I went, they told me I could start the quickest. So it literally took me 2 days to, you know, start working. You know, got to this Chevy store, pretty much I only spent like about, I think 20 days at that store. Not even a full month. That's a long story again, right? After that store, I ended up having to go find a different job at a Toyota dealership, right? And I remember going to this Toyota dealership. It's a big store, right? I think they're #2 in the nation. So it's a pretty big dealership. And I remember they had 2 departments. We have, you know, a new car side, which looks amazing, right? It's a big showroom, looks pretty nice. It has a Subway inside. And it's just an amazing, you know, aesthetically it's very pleasing, right? I remember like, yo, this is where I wanted to work. I remember going there and trying to get the interviews and they told me, nah, you know, we're not taking anybody on this side right now. We actually just hired somebody about 2 weeks ago. So we're not hiring anybody at the moment, right? I remember going there. They told me, but what you could do is you can go across the street, which is the used car department, right? And you can see if they're hiring over there. Now, a lot of you have never been to this dealership, but some of you probably might know. So at the time, nowadays is different. The used car department at this store now looks amazing. They've revamped it. They've actually changed locations and, you know, got a bigger building. But at the time, this used car dealership looked like a traditional buy here, pay here lot. It looked totally different from what the new car side looked like. So I remember when they told me to go over there, I'm like, man, this is not where I want to be. I want to be on the other side where they're selling the new cars as opposed to where they're selling the used cars. But little did I know, you know, I had no experience in car sales. So what did I really know? But they were actually doing me a very big favor because that building, if it wasn't for like the size and how much smaller the team was on that side as opposed to the new car building where there's like 50 plus car sales people and a bunch of managers and it's just much more chaos. If it wasn't for like the environment that I was put in at that specific building, I don't think I would learn as much as I learned. And when it comes to the car sales industry and, you know, form the relationships that I was able to form, you know, because of it, right? So after about 2 weeks after the interview, right, I had to go through the whole process, you know, do the drug thing and all of that. They do the background. I think it took about 2 weeks for me to actually get started. So now I get started at this dealership. I'm pretty much still practically brand new to this whole industry, right? I only have about 20 days of experience of selling cars from the Chevy dealership. So I'm pretty much a brand new salesman. I'm 19, no sales experience before, right? Like I said, never really sold anything prior to the car sales industry. So I get started in the car sales industry. I'm looking at all these guys that they're making, you know, a lot of money. I'm asking a lot of questions, right? I was a young, hungry guy, right? Because the situation that I was in as well at the time, I was still living from Airbnb to Airbnb. I didn't have a spot that I actually, you know, could call mine at the time, right? I just had a car, rebuilt title, you know, would come to work and then pretty much go back home to the Airbnb. That was my life for about 6 months, right? So I remember being at these dealerships and I'm asking questions. I'm trying to figure out what I can do to start selling more cars. And I remember seeing everybody's, you know, strategy. The main thing that people would tell me is, you know, just stand outside, try to get it up. When you get the up, bring them in, come speak to the manager and try to sell a car. And I was like, okay, you know, that's cool, right? But the guys that I see doing that, you know, they're not selling the amount of cars that I wanted to sell, right? Because I've seen guys at this store selling 20, 30, 40 plus cars. I'm like, I want to do that. The guys that I see are taking ups, they're like, you know, 10 car guys. And I'm like, okay, if I want to be a 20, 30, 40 car guy, I don't think the strategies that they're implementing is what I should be copying, right? In the beginning, you might have to start taking ups, you know, make phone calls, things of that nature because you just have no clientele, right? But you should also still be trying to build your own name, right? So this is where the background that I mentioned earlier in this story of the SMMA and the e-commerce and being introduced to that digital marketing world comes into play. Because I remember a lot of the lessons that I learned from there. Like I said, I got introduced to Facebook and Instagram ads, you know, posting content creation, all of these things. I took those lessons that I learned and I started applying it to the car sales industry for me specifically. So if you go on my Corey King Automotive page, you'll see, right? I kind of just started posting vehicles. I started posting pictures of my customers, started making videos of myself, started creating offers. And you know, that over time started to pick up, right? I would make videos about specific cars and people would make comments under it. People would reach out to me. Then I started boosting posts, you know, certain Instagram posts, and I introduced Facebook ads. And this all became a thing, like my own system, right? In the very first full year, I was able to make over $150,000 selling cars, right? So 5 months, I remember this is kind of when I got like my first decent paycheck. I think that month I made about like 9 grand, right? And after taxes, after the draw, I got like a check for like about 5,500 if I remember correctly. And that's the, you know, most money I've ever made at the time. I'm still 19 when this happened. And I got this check and I used that money to finally leave the Airbnb to go and get my own, you know, place in my own apartment. So, you know, it's a long story. Obviously, you know, I kept selling cars moving forward, kept getting better, right? And eventually I made over $218,000 in only 9 months. At 22 years old, I got the pay stubs for that as well to prove that. And, you know, the car sales industry overall has just been very good to me. Fast forward to where I'm at now, you know, now I'm pretty much making content, helping other car salespeople that are interested in, you know, one, joining the industry, and also two, figuring out how they can start getting more customers and generating more leads for themselves. So, you know, if it wasn't for the car sales industry, you know, I don't think I would really, well, I know knowing me, I would figure something else out. But, you know, I feel like this industry has really just given me a sense of direction and it's helped me along the way. And it's always something that I know I could always fall back on, right? I always think to myself, hey, you know, worst case scenario, I know I have the skill set and I know how to sell cars and I know how to generate income, right? That is the main thing. Like, I didn't settle for, you know, a salary, or I didn't settle for an hourly paid job. I got into sales and I took the risk. If you're anything like me, you know, something like this could definitely be beneficial for you, right? If you want to be paid what you think you're worth, and if you don't want your income to have cap limits on it, then something like this car sales industry can definitely help you and actually become that difference maker in your life like it did for me. So I hope you enjoyed the little story that I gave. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see next, right? Share your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you all in the next video. I'm glad you made it to the end of the video. I got 2 options for you. You can either watch the next video or you can click the first link in the description to join the Smarter Salesman University community if you're ready to take your car sales career to the next level. I'm looking forward to helping you out, see if I can share some nuggets with you. More importantly, looking forward to meeting you. Have a blessed day.